So you've got a pretty exciting weekend coming up, and it's the cameras are going to be here, and you're going to be here. You're going to be doing your show Saturday.
Right.
Tell us all about it.
So, John, for a while now, I've been involved, obviously, in special needs planning and special needs law because I have a little girl, Sophia, who has Down syndrome. She's also legally blind. So, about 12 years ago, I became vested into the special needs community. We've got 1 in 5 folks living in this country with some form of a disability.
That's 20%.
That's 20%. 20%. And when it comes to autism right now, autism has been the fastest growing developmental disability in the world. So it wasn't too long ago that we had 1 in 10,000. Now it's 1 in 68.
Is it being overdiagnosed?
I don't think it's being overdiagnosed. I think that it is a growing concern and a growing fact that there are 1 in 68 children that are being diagnosed with autism on the spectrum. 40% of them, John, are nonverbal. So when they're diagnosing, they are looking at, of course, brain functioning. And autism is just a, not a typical normal brain function. And so you've got cognitive impairment, you've got impairment with regard to social interaction, you've got impairment with regard to communication. And so there are significant symptoms that come along with that. And again, 40%, of course, nonverbal, so they're not speaking. And so the idea...
So they really can't tell you what's wrong.
Exactly.
Or how they feel.
And so most of this has come about, again, in the last maybe 2 or 3 decades, in which the numbers are just staggering. Some studies out of South Korea believe it's 1 in 38. And there are predictions that say, John, if we don't figure out what's going on with this piece, because again, it's the fastest growing developmental disability, but the most underfunded in terms of research, that by 2025, it could be 1 in 2. So how does half the world population take care of the other half? That doesn't make sense. But part of what we've been doing with Lady Law and our outreach in terms of bringing the message to people that don't really understand what autism is to make them aware and then move forward to acceptance. So we've been involved with the Foundation for Autism Acceptance for about a year now, which was a foundation created by Stacey Levy, and her son Jagger has autism, and he was the one that was singing at the middle school in Shrewsbury, and that's got like 10 million views. And it's a lifelong plan that they have to make in order to support their child.
And it is lifelong. This is not something that they outgrow for a period of time.
There's no cure for autism. There's only one scientific method that is proven to treat autism, and that's applied behavior analysis. So enter Nassim Aoude, who's CEO and founder of Autism Behavioral Services. He's been working to really bring the message out there. And we've got B.F. Skinner's daughter, Julie Vargas. I'm sure you've heard of B.F. Skinner. Dr. Julie Vargas.
Thank you so much for being willing to do this interview about the history of behavior analysis, and your history is a part of that greater history.
Well, thank you for permitting me. Saturday, we've got the most amazing show. Rima Arani, she is an award-winning filmmaker, John. She's won at Cannes, she's won at Hollywood. She's doing a full documentary now on autism, which is just amazing. She's flown in from Lebanon. She's flown out to California. She's interviewing parents and people out there that are diagnosed, talking about what the parents' struggles are, and she'll be here in studios filming along with the CEO of Autism Society of America, and so we're pretty excited.
So this is not just a home movie thing.
No, she is a real award-winning. She's done over 50 different films, and she is extremely significant in her field.
And what was your entree-vous into this? How did they find you, or how did you find them, Allison?
Well, I have been very vested in the autism community for a couple of years now, and they had asked me at some point to be on the board, the Foundation for Autism Acceptance Worldwide, so I'm serving as a board member on that foundation. And this allowed me to meet up with a lot of really wonderful people like V. Versatile Meadows. He's a rapper. He's from California. He'll be in the studio too.
I want you to accept me now. Give a shout out to Jaguars in the house. Jaguars in the house.
He won $50,000 in the Indie.com challenge for the Autism Society of America. So we've got good folks getting together to do good things.
Great. In case you just joined us, folks, this is the Jordan Levy Show on WTAG. My name is John DePietro. Our special guest, I should say, very special guest this half hour is attorney Allison Cohen, and Allison is going to be involved in a which will be probably released in a year or so.
Right.
By the time they put it all
Yes,
together.
it's going to be screened at the Cannes Film Festival in 2018, so we're pretty excited.
Okay. The autism thing, you heard a lot about it when Doug Flutie started
Yes.
talking about it. But before, autistic kids, they didn't have a label for them. There was just, they're slow.
Right.
Is that kind of how it was?
Yes, and again, how many, think about growing up, John, as a child. How many children did you know, were you aware of, that had autism? I
No.
really can't remember
No.
any.
No.
Again, I have a little girl that has Down syndrome. I knew Down syndrome children. I didn't know a lot, but I did know children that had Down syndrome, but I did not know what autism was. Then we all saw the movie, if you remember, Rain Man, and that was our first introduction into what somebody with autism might look like. And now, with the numbers again, when you're talking 1 in 68, you know somebody. You know somebody who knows somebody.
And you know somebody, but even you might not even know that they are
That they have
involved in
autism,
that.
exactly.
Now, let me ask you a technical question. This Asperger is also considered but that's not. I think most of the time when people think of autism, they think of a quote unquote slow person.
Right.
Okay. Asperger's, they're probably not socially with it, but they're brilliant.
They are brilliant. And of course, Asperger's is now part of this whole broad spectrum. So it is a spectrum. It's diagnosed all together on under one umbrella. But again, if you look at the idea that 40% of these kids are nonverbal, they're not speaking, John, that's a significant part of those children that are being diagnosed on the spectrum. And so Asperger's is a small part at the other end. And yes, they still do have trouble with social interaction. So I know a lot of children that have Asperger's, and that piece is still difficult for them.
So what age should parents express concern with if they're not infant, but their child, their toddler, is not speaking? There must be an age. Is it 2? Is it 2.5?
Right.
That they should start getting testing.
I mean, it's a great question. So by the time a child's 3 years old, John, the pediatrician knows pretty much at that point whether or not the child has autism, because they're now gearing questions towards parents to make sure that they are looking for specific things to say, is your child showing this normal development and this kind of growth? What's the communication skills? How are they socially interacting? And so pediatricians are well aware now of what it means to have a child with autism. They say that every 20 minutes, John, every 20 minutes, a family is receiving a diagnosis of autism. So again, this is, a serious situation. It's something that affects everybody. It doesn't matter your race, your religion, your national origin, color, creed, handicap, or your socioeconomic status. That's the prevalency of it.
Now, excluding Down syndrome,
Yes.
when you quote unquote look at a youngster who is not a Down syndrome child,
Right.
visually, do you see anything that tips them off as
Well, it depends on there's a saying, actually, Nassim Aoude had told me this. He's the CEO and founder of Autism Behavioral Services, and they've been doing some wonderful work for quite a while now. He said, if you've met one child with autism, then you've met one child with autism. Every child is different. So,
Different.
you can't really round up to say, well, I clearly know that
Certainly.
this person has autism, but there are standard behaviors that they might display that allows people to see that there is something visually going on with that child. And so how do we take that piece, John, and bring it to the level of acceptance? Because that's what this movement is about, really going from autism awareness to autism acceptance. And I say, get on board, because the train is leaving the station. And I think you saw the pie in the face that I did with Jim Polito. When we put the pie in the face and people said that don't have children with autism, well, why did you decide to do the whipped cream pie in the face? Well, they have a different reaction to the sensory textures of things. So whipped cream and that idea of it being in their face, or just anything that they touch,
you're going to recognize
and that they feel, their
that this is
clothing,
an uncomfortable
certain things that they
feeling
hear,
and outside
sounds,
of my
have a big
element,
impact on
and
them.
that is
So
what I want you to
that
understand,
has
is you
been,
understand
really
autism that much better.
kind of
you
exciting.
had mentioned some numbers, Allison.
Yeah, we have like 640,000 views right now of me taking that huge turkey pan, where it was kind of a little bit of a hoax, because we had the small little whipped cream pan inside there, and putting it in Jim's face. So
On the radio, you can get away with that.
Yeah,
You
well,
know
no,
what
we're on
freaked
TV.
me
We
out
were
with
on
that
TV, yeah.
giant thing? They had, for those of you not watching on TV, they had a pan the size of one you would cook a turkey in.
Okay,
Frosted Cloud
so
got a good pie in his face. Yes.
what is the result that you hope to achieve by this activity with the filming?
To raise awareness about autism. Meanwhile, the field hockey team was more than happy to do their part for the cause.
It's just good to bring everyone together for a really good cause.
The Pie in the Face Challenge works the same way as the Ice Bucket Challenge, where someone is challenged to do the challenge. The field hockey team is actually challenged by another sports team. Holy Name also is another local school that has done the Pie in the Face.
You have awareness. Awareness leads to this idea of acceptance, because we've got to all get around the fact that the numbers are staggering, John.
How do you define acceptance, though, Allison? What do you mean by
That's
that?
a great question. I mean, if you look at children from many years ago and how they were being raised, issues for bullying obviously always existed, but the bullying could have taken place through any socioeconomic dynamic or through any group. But what sort of turned out now with children with special needs is they were subject to a lot of bullying, very specifically targeted. And so what we're trying to do is make sure that people understand that if a child has certain behaviors, there may be an underlying diagnosis behind
Reason
those.
for it. They're not just a bad kid.
Exactly.
Or being disobedient.
Right. And
kind
so
of
if
thing.
you see a child in the store, you see a child in the movie theater, or wherever you see the child, there's got to be a little bit more level of compassion, of empathy to say, look, there are things that are happening now, with these children. And again, we don't know what the reason is, John. There's no research to this point that understands why it is that a child is diagnosed with autism.
How about heredity?
There's no, as far as I know, as in this moment in time, John, there is absolutely no unequivocal answer as to why it is that a child is diagnosed with autism. Again, it is discovered by the time the child's 3 years old. There is no answer. That's why the fact that it is the fastest growing developmental disability in the world and the most underfunded, to me, is concerning.
So how do you change that paradigm so that people understand that this is not just one kid in the corner?
Right, exactly. Well, you get people like Rima Irani, who is an award-winning documentary filmmaker, to get out and do what she's doing, flying out from Lebanon, going to LA, meeting with these folks, coming up here to Boston, standing here in the studios on Saturday to meet with people that have been doing groundbreaking work. We've got Scott Badesh. He's the president and the CEO of Autism Society of America. So
when you look at a national level, the Autism Society really, in my opinion, is the grassroots group that incorporates not only individuals on the spectrum, families, professionals, community people who really want to make life better for people with autism.
So you've got groups out there like the Foodie Foundation that are trying to bring awareness, but with people on the level of Rima Irani, I feel that we will take it to the next level of how do we go forward and understand that this is something that the population needs to face. As a community, we all need to get around it. We need to move from awareness to acceptance, and we need to navigate these waters together.
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 That's the important word.
Yes, together.
We've got a minute left before we got to take a break, but are there instances of families with more than one child being diagnosed?
Another great question. Yes, in fact, there are families that might have 2 or 3 children that are diagnosed on the spectrum. Does that give us any insight into whether it's hereditary, whether it's environmental based on the foods we eat? Obviously there's still groups of folks out there that believe that it might be related to immunizations. I don't know. I'm not a doctor, and unfortunately there's nobody at this point in time that have come up with an answer as to why it is that this number is growing in staggering terms. So it's incredibly prevalent, and we need to put our collective minds together to figure it out.
Allison, I know it's impossible to give a lawyer the admonition saying, give us a short answer. So I've got a heavy question for you. I'll give it to you right now, and then please answer it when we come back from the break. But is this an epidemic? And Allison Cohen is going to think for a little bit on that question, and we'll be back with more of attorney Allison Cohen, the host of Legalese on WTAG. This is the Jordan Levy Show. My name is John DePietro. Welcome back to the Jordan Levy Show. My name is John DePietro. We are here finishing up with attorney Allison Cohen. And Allison, just prior to the break, I said I was going to ask you a question, give you a little time to mull it over. And I said, is this autism issue an epidemic, and I know lawyers like to choose their words very carefully. And I
Right.
know the word epidemic has the word infectious tied to it.
It does. It does. We actually, I mean, for the listeners' sake, John and I looked it up because I want to make sure that I understand the term epidemic. I'm an attorney, not a medical doctor, obviously. But according to our sites and our sources, John, epidemic, rapid spread of infectious disease to a large number of people in a short time. So is that what autism is? No, because it's not an infectious disease.
Legally, it's
yes,
not.
legally it's not. But ultimately, what is it? We do know, again, it affects brain development. It affects it through cognition. It affects it through social interaction. It affects it through communication. These are the three areas that autism is known to play a role in terms of the development of somebody's normal brain. Do parents know? Yes. By typically 12 to 18 months, children either don't have words or they're slow with their words. Sometimes they have words and then they lose them later on. But by 3 years old, John, these diagnoses are being made clearly by pediatricians. And again, what is it that we're going to do when we've got 1 in 68 children now being diagnosed on the spectrum? Studies out of South Korea, I believe, show it's 1 in 38. And in fact, if we don't get our heads around it, will it be 1 in 2 in 2025? I don't know, but half the world's population cannot be taking care of the other half. That's not going to work. And so this is where we are as a community.
Okay. You've got a big event coming up this weekend. Give us a
Right.
synopsis of that.
Okay, so the big event on Saturday, we're hosting this wonderful legalese show that I do each week. As everybody knows who listens to my show, we've got award-winning filmmaker Rima Arani. Again, she won at Cannes Film Festival. She has at least 50 films that she has been, doing, and she's going to be focusing on the struggle and the sacrifice of parents of children with autism. We have Julie Vargas, Dr. Julie Vargas. She is B.F. Skinner's daughter. Now, what's so interesting about that is that B.F. Skinner, of course, was the father of applied behavior analysis. So you've got her coming in with the only scientifically proven method for treating autism is, in fact, applied behavior analysis. So the fact that Dr. Julie Vargas now is part of the mix and getting the word out there and figuring these things out, to me, is just amazing. And then we have the Chief Executive Officer of the Autism Society of America, Scott Badesh. He'll be flying in, and he is, just doing great things. He also is working and believes in terms of his organization for advocacy and awareness that ABA practices are also the only way to scientifically treat autism. And then we've got Russell Lehman. He's speaker, he's an author, he's a poet, he's an advocate. He also has autism, John. And so he's going to be on the show talking about his experience and what he's done to try and move it towards acceptance.
And the timing of the show is
11 a.m. on Saturday morning. Always
right here, right in these studios.
Right in these studios. We are going to have a massive amount of people because other folks are flying in too. So we've got V Versatile Metals. He'll be here. We've got Nassim Aoude, CEO of Autism Behavioral Service.
And you'll be sitting in this seat.
I'll be sitting in the driver's
Here
seat.
to perform his winning song, Born This Way, please welcome V Meadows.
I know you're struggle. Yes, a little bit more. Come on. I'm telling my story now so you can understand. Given the struggle is going to test me as a man. A beautiful face, but nothing seems out of place. A typical baby boy, a bit of God's grace. As time went by, I started noticing things. Like a heavenly dove, he started flapping his wings. Then I started wondering, he's never said daddy. Never even spoke, and neither has little Maddie. Talk to my wife, yeah, turn it to a fight. Despite denials, I'm thinking maybe she's right. We approached the doc, I had a little skepticism. She stopped my clock with the words of autism. Facing the truth is like a matter told proof. It's like I'm paying the price for things I did as a youth. Ask God, why you put me through this? I don't have the strength, God, so why you wanna do this? That's right. I want you to accept me now. Stop judging, I'm going this way. I want you to accept me now. Alright. Imagine the mother that's living in a box. Her kids get marked in public glocks. She have to decide she really want to go out. Parents like her know what I'm talking about. You look at me cruel, there's something they don't understand. Pay attention to what I'm saying on my wristband. A meltdown, a tantrum on the ground. Yeah, I saw you frown when he started making his sounds. But what you don't know is this child has made me a better person than I ever could be, and that's wild. So listen up because I'm speaking for him. He's non-verbal and maybe a little weak in the limbs. The package he was given was the same as yours. His brain's operating different, you can thank the Lord. You might judge him even thinking he's cray-cray. Check yourself, he was born that way. All they want to do is be accepted. I want you to accept me now. All the kids on autism just want to be accepted. This last verse is basically how I feel about it. You may see him in a deep staircase, and something you never knew his mind is amazing. Got a connection to all God's animals. They hold gifts from above, not fallible. Singing, painting, teaching, acting, playing instruments, sports and rapping. These kids retain incredible talent, smarter than a typical kid. It's called a balance. Take a moment to see how they survive in the life. The stereotypes of boots just giving them flight. Despite a disability and difficulties, he has three-dimensional thinking and lack a degree. Quick mathematical skills up the back. Now you know the facts, you can call them acrobats. A diversity of conditions and people within it. A puzzle ribbon symbolizing the children by a minute. Stop judging, I was born this way. I want you to accept me now. So yeah, this song is dedicated. And I'm just being a voice for the children of the world. The chorus, born this way. It doesn't matter if you have Down syndrome. It doesn't matter ADHD. It doesn't matter. I'm having a voice. I'm speaking for all of the children of the world who don't have a voice. That's the whole purpose of this song. And what I want to say is that if we all stick together with this, we can make a difference. And I'm a bus driver here from San Diego using my talent to make a difference. And no, I don't have a child with autism, but I'm speaking for it. So I want to thank everybody for watching my recent video. I love you guys.
Interested in calling you, not on this particular event, but on an overall issue, how can they reach you?
Sure, 508-366-8805, or find me on the web at cohenlawservices.com.
Allison, thank you so much for being with us. We have been with attorney Allison Cohen, the host of Legalese, right here on WTAG each weekend. And this is the Jordan Levy Show. It's WTAG News Radio 580, Worcester's news, weather, and traffic station.